All of you friends, and while I was a CA student, at that point of time the budget for me was direct taxes, looking into the micro aspects of direct taxes was my focus. But over a period of time I understood that in India we chartered accountants have to look at the budget in the macro as well as the micro and macro both the aspects. So if we look at the budget, budget gives a 360-degree view as to what the government wants to achieve. And the most important thing is, while we talk about the budget, where the Indian economy is today and how we are going to utilize the resources, mobilize, augment, that is, I think, the more important role of the budget. Regarding this budget, did it meet the expectation? I think to a certain extent, yes. Was it a populist budget? I think to a great extent, yes. The good thing about the budget, if I would say, is that it is not bad. That is how I would put this budget. Now, the very important thing is, at this particular juncture, when we look at the Indian economy, there is a slowdown. There has been a slowdown in the last 2 to 3 years because of certain moves, which may be the positive moves in the longer run. But as of now, the slowdown is there. At that point of time, when we talk about the fiscal deficit, as a thumb, fiscal deficit should be kept low. The revenues, the expenditure should match the revenues, should not exceed beyond a limit. But under these conditions, when we are in slowdown, generally the economics say that there may be a little more fiscal deficit, the government may spend a little more and pump in some more money in the economy so that there can be a little more vibrancy, there can be more velocity in the economy. But probably the fiscal deficit of 3.5%, 3.33% as the finance minister said, which is being expected. Because currently if you look at it, GST might change the game of the country, but it might take a few years. As of now, the revenues from GST, we are not expecting to be very high. So how the government is going to get the revenues? So that's why I said fiscal deficit could have been increased for 1 or 2 years, because for sure, in the coming years with GST, revenues coming in, we can definitely look into fiscal, there might be even times where we can have fiscal surplus. Regarding this government budget, this budget was very much inclined towards rural development. Some 14.3 lakh crores have been set aside for rural infra, and particularly agriculture has been the focus. A number of steps like MSP of 1.5 times the cost for the crop, that I think is a good provision. I'm not sure how the cost is going to be computed. Are there any effective ways for computing cost in agricultural sector? Some 42 mega food parks trying to help out in terms of exports of agricultural goods, organic farming, and a number of such type of aspects were discussed by the finance minister in the budget. Now, I am not very sure how much these things are going to be effective, but if yes, if agriculture is affected positively, if a good thrust is there is on agriculture, if the impact on agriculture is good, then definitely that would generate a good disposable income in the hands of agriculture, which will actually shoot up the chain and can help the industries also in terms of growing demand. And this might definitely be a good way for reflecting this particular economy. And otherwise also, if you look at it, the budget has to be inclusive. India today is in such a situation that while the GDP growth is considered to be on the higher side, like the finance minister said that it is going to be somewhere 7.5%, but in India we are going to see to it that richer people are going to be much more richer, and there is going to be a divide. At that point of time, a very inclusive and a sustainable budget is required, and I could see that by way of his focus on rural and agricultural thing. Some of the very important things which I found missing, while even the finance minister talked about the smart cities has been the project of this government, but I did not see a very considerable allocation for this particular purpose. At least I have not seen something very major thing coming out of it. Whether with small allocation we can really do something on smart cities, because when you talk about budget, it is not about only finances, it is all about the quality of the life of the citizens of the nation, and whether the smart cities can start with that thing and can change it, that's a question. One very crucial thing about the budget, which I think is the most important thing for India as of now, is about the employment index. It has been observed whenever the economies have developed, at that point of time, whatever is the growth rate in GDP, the employment growth rate has exceeded in many of the nations. In India, in the last few years, even though the GDP is growing at a consistent rate or maybe at a higher rate, but the employment has not been increased commensurately. On the contrary, in some of the sectors, employment is going down, which is a very, very big threat to the Indian nation, because we talk about India as the youngest country. We talk about India as a country where we are very high density, highly populated. If the budget does not look into employment, if we don't find out the ways and means how the employment opportunities are to increase, then definitely India is going to face a big challenge. And what we talk about the assets in India, the youth might convert into liability. So I think for the last 2 to 3 years, I am waiting for the finance minister to talk something more concrete on this employment, a major issue. Research is another very important thing of a country. When we say that India today is on the takeoff stage, it is at the stage where US was in 80s. Then definitely one very important thing is we have to invest heavily on research. That also I found out was inadequate in the budget. Though the finance minister said that 1,000 students will be given handsome amount for doing the research projects with IITs and NITs, but I'm not sure whether it would be sufficient looking at the size of this particular nation. And yeah, on infrastructure, it seems there was a good thrust, and on infra, some 9,000 kilometers of highway, 35,000 kilometers under Bharatmala project. These are some of the very good projects which can consider. Not only that, the border roads and the tunnels, the focus of this government, I think that is also something very noteworthy and a positive thing I look at it. The redevelopment of 6,000 railway stations, that is what the finance minister talked about. As you understand now, that the railway budget is very much merged with this union budget. I am not sure how this redevelopment is going to be there. This is going to be a very important thing, though he said that escalators will be there at virtually all the stations, which is a positive thing. In short, what I'm talking about is having very good railway stations is the need of the hour of India. One positive thing was about Udan. Last year the Udan movement was started, and it was reiterated by the finance minister that 56 unserved airports and 37 unserved helipads, they will be made possible. And interestingly, as he said, that जो हवाई चप्पल पहनते थे अब वो हवाई यात्रा कर पाएंगे. I hope that this budget will actually help the country to take off, like means India should have a flight. That is what is my hope. Regarding the ease of doing business, the finance minister said that 372 suggestions being given to the state. Now it is a matter of time to see what the states and union together does into this and how we can actually boost the economy. But anyway, if the agricultural sector on which the budget has been predominant, if it actually works well, I think this is going to have a positive impact to this economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay Bhai.